Thank you very much for inviting me. I'm just going to say something about me first because I'm aware that a lot of people on this Zoom call here in this room, and a lot of you probably don't know anything about me. So if that's all right, 30 seconds about me. Well, I was one of those people that did a maths degree and decided that I wanted to do something else before I became a teacher, but I didn't find the something else, so I became a teacher. So straight into teaching, a few years in school, time off for family. And then I sort of fell into an FE college. I thought I was just going to, see what was going on down there after I'd sent my CV in and said, "You got any work?" They were basically trying to make me do the job. They were so short of math teachers. So I'm sure other people have been in similar situations. By the way, if you want to put your images back up on the screen, it's really nice if I can see a bit of an audience, but you don't have to if it's going to make life difficult for you. So there I was, and I found myself teaching maths and physics to beauty therapy students. I hadn't a clue why they were learning maths and physics, and then a bit of GMVQ brickwork students or something like that. And it was great fun, but it was a bit challenging because I really wasn't used to that sort of thing. After 20 odd years, I think I got a bit used to it, and now it's still home when I go back. But after 20 odd years, I did find there's something else, and I went to the University of Nottingham, did a PhD in maths, learning of functional skills, and then have stayed there ever since, working on various research projects. So that's me. So what have we done today? Well, I'm going to ask you a question first, which is, what have you learned today? Not what you learned, not what have you learned about. We can all go back through the programme and say what you've learned about, but what have you actually learned? So not just what you've learned about, that sounds like a good idea that you might take that. What have you learned about you and your teaching and your college and your classroom that actually is going to make a difference to the way you go forward? It's going to change your practice. Well, I don't know. And I could ask you to put lots of things in the, teaching FE is hard. Somebody's already put something in the chat. Yeah, it is hard. The sky's the limit. Yeah, there's all sorts of potential to do all sorts of interesting things. Teachers and learners are difficult. Well, as a manager, I did find one or two tricky teachers, but everyone's got the students' interests at heart. At least everyone here, I think, has got the students' interests at heart, and that unites us, even if we might rub each other up the wrong way from time to time, have different ideas. So lots of things that we might have learned apart from what we've learned about. So first of all, I'm going to just make a few comments about the different presentations. You might have been in this room all the time and heard them all, you might not. But here in this room, we started with Elaine Sam from Christ the King Sixth Form College. Really interested in there that it was about motivation, engagement. If there's one thing that everyone wants to know about, it's motivation, engagement, and getting these students to attend. If you can't get them to attend, how on earth are you going to teach them? So if they're not going to come, how do you engage them? How do you actually get them there? But I like the way you extended this now into looking at student confidence and link it to their attainment. That question about what aspects help most is a really tricky question that you brought up, because actually you're looking at a whole package of things, and inevitably in action research you want to do more than just one thing. And when you're dealing with particularly a social problem, you can't just separate things out. So you looked at different approaches in and outside class, and this whole idea of mentoring and supporting students in different ways with different approaches is important. It's something that came out of some of the early work that I did, that a mentoring, a support, a coach, that sort of role alongside a maths teacher can be really effective. So thank you for bringing those things to our attention, Elaine and Sam. There were some really useful things in there to think about. And we went on then with Margaret from Stanford to look again at the different models and ways in which things might work. And this was a combination of using software and study mentors. Now, this is, again, really important to think about what exactly you need to do to get the right impact. So you did mention some caution about LSAs, and that it was better where people had a math specialism, that they actually could contribute more that way. So the general support the LSA gives is important, but the math specialism is important too if you want to take it further. But we have got a problem, haven't we? So where do we get all these people from that are also math specialists? So we're always limited by the context in which we're working, and that's important to remember too. There's some things we might want to do that really, really can't do. So again, we're thinking about that, supporting students. We moved on to Lee and Grimsby, and some really detailed work there on re-engagement techniques using the math motivator. And one of my questions about the math motivator when I first heard about it was, what is that role? How do you define that role? What are the most important bits of that role? I could see that a huge amount of work's been done building on what you've done before, careful tracking, and the interesting bit about what students like and what they found was of most benefit to them. And you know, sometimes you ask students what they like, and actually they just like to go home. Well, they don't want to be there anyway. So, you know, that's what they really like. And so asking them about the things that they like is often asking them about the things that they're comfortable with. But we all know that in order to learn, you have to be a bit uncomfortable as well. So you can't just think about what's nice and comfortable. There is a point at which we need to put people in a comfort zone so that they can develop confidence, but you have to expand beyond that. Some really important principles there, I think, that come out of the work on ZPD and that have been translated into this sort of environment. So thank you very much, Lee, there for bringing those things out. Laura at Tameside, yours was very much focused on the AO3 questions, using some of those techniques that we've all read about growth mindset and how to use group work effectively, but orientated very much toward the examination. And that raised a question in my mind, which I'm going to return to at the end, about what are we doing this for? We are doing it because they need to pass an examination, but is that all we're doing? So a combination really, although it was exam orientated, there was also this idea of growth mindset and developing students' confidence and ability to look further. We also had growth mindset then with Nadra, Julius and Barbara from Lakes and Partners. By the way, when I mentioned college, I do mean partners are rather involved. Sorry for that. And the brainology, highlighting things like fear of failure, belief that you can't succeed, that you've got a fixed ability, all those things. We're familiar with those, aren't we? We see it so often that students can't believe that they could do maths. They can't believe that they're going to succeed. And sadly, when they do succeed and they pass the exam, what's the best thing about passing the exam? I once said to a group of students, we don't ever have to do maths again. Oh, but actually, is that really what I want? That students come to the end of it and think, great, I never have to do maths again. Maybe not. So thank you for stimulating some thinking there around growth mindset and sharing what you're doing there in actually in practical terms. Molly and Kay from Preston work on Nearpod. Found that fascinating because I think about 8 years ago I was involved in a project where Nearpod was one of the digital technologies that was being used. There's a paper on that somewhere. This was what the work we did was very much framed by how does enhance formative assessment, how can you use something like Nearpod to get better formative assessment techniques. So I think that's raised a lot of interest, but an interesting there, a different response to digital. So a response to Nearpod that was quite positive, not necessarily outside the classroom, but earlier on, some of you said, yeah, the students were not that keen on Century or whatever it was. So this, again, something that I've seen in my own research, the mixed responses to digital technology, because it isn't just the technology. It is the nature of the technology, but it's also how you use it. And that influences how students respond to it. They're not all going to respond in the same way if it's being used differently. So that's something to think about. And finally, Katie at Plymouth, lovely presentation again about the environment in which maths is being taught and the development of mathematics outside the classroom in a different environment, and reminds me again that environment is so important. And even if you're not outside the classroom, what sort of culture and environment you create within the classroom is also important. So I found some really interesting, stimulating things from all of those things. I'm sure you found different things as well, but that's just from my perspective and me. So overall, quick sum up. I was really pleased to see the quality of the action research over time has improved. I can see a better appreciation of methodology and some really good use of exploring other literature and other research before you look at your own context and what you can do there with it. I can see a resonance with a lot of larger scale research that I'm aware of. So you can see the same sort of things coming through. And that's why it's good to read that, to see what's out there, and then think how you really apply that in your own environment. Secondly, that was my secondly, consistency with larger scale research is really heartening to see that research is becoming a part of FE practice. And that's one of the best things we can do, to become those reflective practitioners that try things out, but in a way that is a little bit more formal, a little bit more structured as a piece of action research in our context. What does come through, though, is this idea of complexity and the difficulty of getting any sort of causal relationships between doing this and the results. And that is the nature of what we're doing here. We're working in complex environments. Education, teaching and learning is complex. And so we might not be able to single one thing out and say that caused that. But the other the thing I mentioned earlier about a package, on the whole, we're not looking at just one tiny thing. We're looking at how we might put strategies together. And when you start putting a package of strategies together, if you get the right package together, you get a synergy and you achieve more than the sum of the parts. So think about the package that you put together and how the bits complement each other, rather than trying to sling everything at it all at once without thinking about how they fit together, because I think that really helps us. And finally, no, not quite finally, the purpose of what we're doing is really important. So one of the biggest problems is, as you know, is that students are coming with images of mathematics and experiences of mathematics that are not helpful. And so if we can put them in a different environment, if we can make the culture of the classroom different, if we can get them to move into the growth mindset, we can get them to be more resilient, then there's a chance of moving beyond that image that was had in the past. And one of my recent papers is about that very transition from the image of maths that's quite common in society, that it's unachievable, it's for the elite people who can do maths, it's not enjoyable, it's a bit of a mystery. Moving from that image of maths to an image of maths with a can-do. Yes, this is for me. I identify with mathematics in a positive way. Making that transition is important, however we do it. So changing attitude, confidence, behaviour, so that they pass the exam and they go beyond it. It doesn't just stop there. And my final mention, I can't get away from this one at the moment, is the whole idea of scaling up. You know, you start something small, you think, oh, it'd be better if you could do it on a bigger scale somehow. I'm going to just throw one thought in your mind, which is one that we're dealing with the whole college approach at the moment. One of our key things about scaling up is that it isn't just scaling up. Scaling up is about elevating something from being a practice to a policy, actually getting it not just embedded, but addressed at policy level as well. Scaling out is about where increasing the numbers that are involved. And that's what a lot of you, I think, are wanting to do, to get more people involved, more teachers involved, or more students involved in what you've been doing. But there's also an element, a third dimension here, of scaling deep. Scaling deep means fundamentally changing hearts and minds, beliefs and behaviour. And I guess that's really what we're aiming for, because that is, if you can change beliefs, you've got something more sustainable. So I'm going to leave those thoughts with you because I've said plenty and my time's done. But thank you very much, and congratulations to everybody who's contributed, those who are presenting. It's been fantastic listening to you, and all those behind the scenes have been involved in your colleges as well and your partner colleges. So thank you very much.